Hi, everyone. Welcome. Just waiting for a few more people to come in before we officially start. Hello there. Hi, John. Nice to see you. Hi, Johnson. Hi, Kyle. Hi, Paul. We're just waiting for a few more people to come in. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome. If you don't know me yet, I'm Rod. I'm tuning in from the Philippines and community choreographer for Pollinate Impact. My role is weaving our community together through convenings like this, where we share insights, tools, and inspiration to strengthen the work of impact incubators and accelerators all around the world. Welcome to the second installment of the Pollinators Toolkit series. So today we'll be exploring frameworks and processes that our fellow members in the network use when they conduct due diligence, learning from the real world examples of how others assess enterprises and manage that process thoughtfully and efficiently. So before we dive in, I just want to have a quick housekeeping reminder. If we can please take a moment to rename ourselves on Zoom with your name and your organization right next to it. So I see some people have already done that. If you can just put your organization to the right of your name, just so that we can see who is in the room, and will make connecting so much easier. Thank you so much. And while we are doing that, Aditi, once you are ready, if you can please bring up our slides, that would be great. Again, welcome. We're just waiting for the slides. There we go. Awesome. Okay, since this is a member session, everybody here is already a member of the network. If Pollinate has helped you even just a little through the programs that we've had, maybe you discovered a new funding lead, any tool that you've actually used from the tool library, or enjoyed a conversation that reminded you that you're not alone in this work, it'll be great to pass it on. You can refer a peer to join the Pollinate network and get 10% off your next annual membership fee. So again, it'll help to spread the good word. If all you have to do is share the link or scan the QR code on the screen, and then once they get approved for membership, you get your 10% off your next annual membership fee. So let's keep growing this garden together, one good referral, one new bloom at a time. All right. Next slide, please. And while we're on the topic of staying connected, being part of the Pollinate Impact Network means you're not just on a mailing list, you're part of a whole hive of opportunities. And in 2026, we're officially launching our member-only monthly newsletter, which will include all of those listed on the screen. So from members-only convenings to the database, to the tool showcases, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a little bonus. So if for teams who have subscribed by December 31 this year, you will automatically be entered into a draw to win a free ticket to the Global Potluck in Manila in 2026. So we just made our official announcement that for next year, our Global Potluck will be happening in Manila. So if your team registers the most, and you get a free ticket to go to the Global Potluck here in Manila. And so don't miss out, subscribe and forward it to your teammates so that they can get access to, so that you can be in the loop for all things Pollinate. All right, and we'll send that to you also after the call today. And of course, there's a lot of things happening. It's the end of the year, so we have a lot of upcoming sessions for you. And whether you've been part of the network for a while now or just getting to know us, there's something for everyone in the next few weeks. So next week, October 15th, we have our first installment of the Agriculture Incubation State of Play, where we'll take a deep dive into how agricultural innovation is shaping the future of food and the role that impact incubators can play in feeding the world. At the end of October, October 29th, we have our Roots to Results, where we're unlocking alternative pathways to revenue, where we'll discuss creative alternative revenue streams that help impact incubators thrive beyond grants and equity. And we'll also share a bit of what our research has revealed about financial sustainability across the Global South. November 19th is the second Agriculture Incubation State of Play, spotlighting how incubators are supporting blue economy and aquaculture-focused enterprises and what that means for the sustainability of our coastal and marine systems. And then on November 27th, this one I'm very excited for, is a can't miss conversation with three funders and supporters, GIZ Philippines, GIZ Kenya, and UNSCAP, where we'll have an honest dialogue about what funders and ecosystem enablers are looking for and how we can collaborate more efficiently. So I hope you can join us for that one. And then for any of our new members or for newcomers within member organizations, we have two new member orientations coming up on November 5 and December 3, which can help you make the most out of being part of the Pollinate Impact community. So all of these sign-up links are in your inbox or in the WhatsApp group. And if you're not a member yet, we'd love to welcome you to the WhatsApp Hive so that you can get more updates there. All right, thank you so much again for being here and for bringing your energy into the space. So with that, let's get started with our check-in. If we can bring out the Menti. Hi, Paul. We'll be sending all the links through your email after the call. Yeah, worries. And thank you everybody for already saying hello on the chat. That's so great. Right, just waiting for our Menti. Great, there. I think Aditi has sent out the Menti link on the chat group. If you can please join us there. We just have 3 questions for today. Just wanted to get to know who's with us in the room. Great. I hope everybody can access it. If you are having trouble accessing the Menti, you can also join us through the chat once the Mentimeter is displayed. Let me quickly. Give me a minute. All right. Awesome. Go. Okay, great. We are a very mixed group today, which is awesome. We have a lot of people coming from Kenya, some from India, Cameroon, Ghana, Accra, Malawi, I see, Virginia, USA. Oh my gosh, Evan, I'm sure it's very early. Thank you for joining us. Vietnam, India, Philippines. Great. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that there's a lot of people today who are here. I think most of us here are in yes. Most of our members or others, something on ESO for sure. And then our last question was just to give our speakers a little bit of context too in terms of your challenges when it comes to due diligence. So I see there's one on data collection, how to collect the data of entrepreneurs, maybe what to collect as well, ensuring coachability and participation, right? How best to make sure that this can be taught and that people will participate, a streamlined approach to conducting due diligence and the right tools to conducting it. Awesome. Data tracking. Okay. Verifying the accuracy and completeness of information provided. That's definitely a good point, having reliable information. Okay. Running a global and remote program that lacks local staff to visit and confirm, right? So the accuracy of data is definitely an issue or a challenge for a lot. Software or like data management also, legal compliance and data verification, data collection from entrepreneurs, right? Awesome. So it seems like there are pretty big buckets here, right? In terms of the accuracy of the data, how to collect the data, how to track it and manage it. So all of these that are kind of coming up as the bigger challenges when it comes to due diligence. And hopefully with the discussions of our speakers for today, we get to maybe address, maybe come up with new questions together and see what our speakers, our fellow members have done in terms of addressing these challenges, because it seems like it's very common, right? In terms of this Menti, a lot of people are facing similar challenges when it comes to their due diligence processes. All right. Well, thank you everybody for answering the check-in. Welcome again to the session. And without further ado, we will be introducing our speakers for today. So I will give them the floor. They will introduce themselves, their name, where they're from, organization. And then our fun question for today that I have asked them is, what's one hobby or pastime that they've been diligent on the past few months or years? So let's hear from them. We'll start with Vibha. Vibha, please go ahead.
Hi, Rod. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are
Great.
audible.
Nice to meet all of you here in this session. So my name is Vibha and I lead impact financing at Villgro. Villgro is a social enterprise incubator and it's 25 years old now. And in the last 25 years, I think we've worked in a whole bunch of sectors and all that. And that's where the diligence processes have become very strong. What I do over here is I design and implement blended finance solutions. And I also manage the debt and equity portfolio at Villgro, looking at making the investments and guide the other teams in terms of the investments. And that's where, again, the diligence piece becomes very important for us. Uh, I have over 20 years of experience, and of which I think the last 15 years are in the social sector. And I am a finance professional, so I'm a chartered accountant, which is the India CPA equivalent, and a CFA charter holder. And I think I'm very, very excited to kind of see how we can take this journey of understanding diligence and simplifying it over here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vibha. What's your one pastime or
Yes, I
hobby that
forgot
you've been
about that. I
diligent
think
on?
that's a recent one. So I've started making sourdough bread, and so I made the starter from scratch, and it's like a new baby. So I have 2 humans, some 10 cat, and now one bread starter baby.
Awesome. Is there a specific recipe that you use, Vibha, for
Yes,
the
I do.
sourdough?
I do.
Please share when you
Yes,
can.
I will.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much. We'll move to Ouma from WIC Sénégal.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Ouma. I'm based in Senegal and I'm managing the Women Investment Club. So we are an association, but also we run an accelerator program dedicated to women entrepreneurs and supporting them in accessing finance. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it. So as I said, I'm based in Senegal, but we also have an office in Ivory Coast. And the accelerator program has been running since 2020. About the hobby, I'm trying to think about the hobby. It's kind of when you ask the question, I'm like, okay, do I have anything? Well, I'm trying to get back on exercising more outside home. So walking, especially waking up early in the morning on Saturday and Sundays and trying to, go for a walk because I have a beach not far away from my home. So yeah, it's a pretty nice place to do it.
Wow, that must be like really motivating when you get to walk along the coastline.
Yes,
Just
it
see
is.
yeah, awesome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Uma.
Thank
And
you.
then last but not least, we have Harsha from Greenr.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I hope I'm audible, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So hi everyone, I'm Harsha and I currently work at Greenr Accelerator program. It's one of the entrepreneurship programs by Technoserve. And we are focused only on entrepreneurs in India. I'm also based in India, Mumbai specifically. So at Greenr, I take care of the operations and just helping run the program smoothly on a day-to-day basis. When I say operations, it includes data collection, analysis, donor reporting, organizing interventions for the startups we work with, marketing communications, and so on. So basically everything at the back end. One non-work hobby, I mean, my hobbies keep changing, but I think currently I would say running. So I started running recently and I did my first 10-kilometer marathon this weekend and I've started to like it a lot. So I think, yeah. that.
That's awesome. Congratulations, Harsha. Sounds like a great hobby to
Thank you.
have. Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. We've gotten to know a little bit about our speakers. So we will go through each of their frameworks and processes one by one. And then in between, we can ask some questions. So we'll start with Vibha. After she presents, we can ask our questions, and then we'll go through Uma and then Harsha last. So all right, we can get started. Vibha, whenever you're ready.
Sure. I'll share my screen.
Yes.
Is the deck visible in full screen?
Yes. Full
Great.
screen. Looks good.
Fabulous. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through how we do it at Villgro. I'll give you a very brief overall process, but then I will go deeper into how we look at financial diligence. So in generally, in terms of the kind of funding that we do, and we only work with for-profit social enterprises, so we don't work with not-for-profits at Villgro, in terms of incubation. We have grants, technical assistance, debt, and equity. And why I am mentioning this is that based on the kind of funding that you are doing, the type of diligence and the depth of diligence will vary. So where we are doing like a grant, which is for a very specific objective or a project, right? We are looking at diligence more from the perspective of, will there be will the organization be able to absorb the grant, meet the objectives? Does it have the capacity to, do that particular project? Same for technical assistance. But when it comes to debt, I am looking at during the debt duration, what is the organization going to be doing? How is it going to be doing financially? And will it have the ability to repay the money back? Which means a lot more parameters are involved. And the timeline of the diligence is also expanded. When it comes to equity, that's the maximum, right? Because there we are looking at pretty much being engaged with the organization for like a 5 to 7 year timeline. And that means that we have to go deeper. Of course, it also will depend on the quantum of funding that is there. So we don't do very large size equity, which is why, we don't do very, very like, a VC fund would do, but it is still more substantial than what you would do for one of the other types of funding. So when we start diligence, right? So at the start of the diligence, it's important to kind of, set the objective, saying what is it that I'm looking to accomplish. So like I mentioned, earlier, so like for example, a debt, what I'm trying to ascertain is what is the repayability of the enterprise, right? What is the financial strength for that organization to be able to absorb the loan, be able to conduct the activities that it is going to conduct, and then generate enough cash flow to be able to return the money, right? So that is my objective when I'm setting that initial, starting with that diligence. It will definitely vary in terms of the kind of funding that is provided, and also what is the amount of money that I have for a diligence, right? So because again, for example, Villgro is a grant funded incubator, right? We don't really have any other avenues of income. So what I have in terms of doing diligence is a finite amount, right? Maybe a few thousand rupees in Indian rupee terms. So based on that, what is it that I need to prioritize for whatever resources I have? Those are some of the key questions that we need to make sure are clear before we initiate a diligence. In terms of the process that we follow, right, when we are onboarding an enterprise, we look at saying, okay, we do an initial screening. Say, if I need to select 10 enterprises, I'm likely to start with a funnel which has 100 enterprises. So 100 apply to me. I do an initial screening. Then I take the shortlisted, which would typically kind of cut down about 60% of the applications that are there. I am left with 40, which I will likely, do a conversation and then take maybe 30 to the internal committee where, we have certain sector leads or technical experts who are present in that meeting and who will give in their views saying, in this particular area, this is what we need to kind of explore more. So we take all of those inputs, right, and do a further diligence on the organization and then present it to an external investment committee, which will say, yes, this is, out of these maybe 20, 10 are ready to kind of, go to the next stage. Post that, we will do a field visit where we verify whatever it is that we have heard from the enterprise, and we engage a third party to do the legal compliance and diligence. And when those are clear, we do the onboarding. So the financial piece comes in the third step, which is the diligence, before we take it to the investment committee. So in a screening, what we do is we do a very high level fit analysis. Like, for example, I said that, we will not work with not-for-profits, right? So there, it's a rejection kind of a stage rather than an acceptance kind of a stage, wherein we say that, okay, this is not a fit, right? And we will, we're looking at a certain problem solution fit that is not there, right? So some of those criteria based on which we will reject pretty much, like I said, 60% of the applications that we would have received. When we go to the diligence stage, right, these are broadly the 6 areas that we will go into detail, right? And there is a tool which Villgro had created. It is called PARD, which is Preliminary Assessment and Rapid Diligence, where we have put in parameters to say that how do we evaluate a team. For example, in a team, we are saying, does the founder have relevant experience in the kind of startup that he is in, right? Kind of sector that he is in. Does he have the technical expertise? Do they have a set of 3 or 4 co-founders which all bring in a diverse set? So one is a tech person, one is a marketing person, one is a finance person, right? So do they have that kind of diversity? And we score them on each of these parameters, and we have defined what does 0 mean, what does 1 mean, what does 2 mean, and 3 mean, right? And we do that scoring on each of these parameters, which includes we have a set for the team. We have a set for the business, wherein we are saying what is the product market fit? Is it solving the problem that they are saying it needs to solve? On the tech aspect, we will talk to experts and understand what is their take on the technology. Do they have something similar? Is the technology defensible? Are there patents and any other intellectual property rights that these people, the startup has, right? How are they proposing to create the impact, right? Is the impact segment that they are addressing a relevant segment? So these are some of the questions that we address in each of these domains, right? Before we say that, okay, there is a certain threshold and this enterprise has cleared that threshold, and hence we can take it to the next level, right? So what I'll do is I'll just touch a little bit more on the financial part. I'll not go into detail on the other parts. So on the financial diligence, right? The first, thing is making a list. So I don't think I've listed that here, but yeah, making a list of what are the different documents that we need and what again are we looking to achieve from the diligence. So when we make the list of documents, the starting point is, do we have the right set of documents and the complete documents? And I'll give you an example of what are the kind of documents that we will take, right? So for example, your last 2 years of audited financial statements, we will not take anything which is not audited. If it is very early, like 6 months or 1-year-old organization, then obviously these won't be there. But then the kind of funding that we will do to them will also likely not be like a large equity funding, right? So look at the financial statements, read it completely. That's what we do, and say, what is the trend looking like, right? Is there an increase in revenue, a decrease in revenue, an increase in profit? If I look at each of the cost line item, what is the trend that is being shown in those cost line items? And what is the reason for those variations that are there? Of course, there will be variations, right? You can't have 2 years which are identical. But where it helps is to understand saying last year my revenue was 100 and my people cost was 30. This year my revenue is 110, but my people cost is 60. And that anomaly should be something that we are picking up from and analyzing these financial statements to go back, investigate further, and understand, is this something that is right, justified? Is there any scope for changing this? Right? And that's where we understand more about the business. We also look at what are the, in addition to the financial statements, we look at, what are their projections, right? Again, depending on the kind of funding, I will probably ask for the next 1 year projection if it's a grant program for 1 year. Or I could ask like a 3 year or a 4 year projection if I'm looking at like a debt or an equity kind of funding, and see whether again those projections make sense. Are the assumptions that they have made in these projections valid? Is it showing, where they are trying to go? Like, for example, if I'm saying my revenue will go from 100 to 200, what is the kind of expenses that I need to make that happen? If it means that I have to spend a lot of money, or if I have to do a lot of advertising, is that advertising coming as part of the projections, right? So that sense check of the projections, the assumptions that they are taking, do those assumptions hold true? And what are the resources that are needed to meet those projections? So it's easy to say that I want to go from X to Y when it comes to my business scale. But what kind of capital is needed to reach that particular target? Is that something that is factored in? Right? So those are some of the things that we will look at, and these are the documents that we will take. We look at the balance sheet, right? And say that, okay, in terms of whatever the startup is telling. So maybe I'll go to the previous slide first, right? So I'm saying when we look at the balance sheet, what is it that they have achieved, right? So if they have invested X amount of money into the business, what is the journey that they have covered? Have they been able to reach a product development ready for market stage? Have they put some amount of money and been able to reach a certain scale in revenue or a certain scale in their manufacturing capacity? So what is it that they have achieved and what kind of funding? And that kind of also helps me say what will be needed in the future, when I am putting a certain target in terms of impact and business for this organization, if I am going to onboard them, right? So these are again the analysis that we do. What kind of funds are they looking for? So if they are, and is there a fit in terms of the kind of funding? So if somebody says that, I want debt funding, and what do I need to do with the debt is I need to, build a plant and machinery, which will take 3 years to build, but the loan needs to be repaid back in 1 year. So there is an obvious mismatch in terms of the kind of instrument to the purpose for which, the organization is seeking money. Because then I need to say that, no, if you are not going to be able to repay money for the next 4 years, because 3 years you're still going to be constructing the plant, then you can't take a 1 year loan, right? So this again from, the kind of numbers that they are projecting for that particular plant, right? That's how we will assess that. We are looking at, again, what is their, some of the most standard ratios, right? If they have $100 in their bank account, right? And they are burning maybe $20 a month, then that means that they are only going to be able to sustain for 5 more months. Can I then give them a project which is maybe a 2 year project? What is the risk of them running out of money? What kind of maybe projects do they have in the pipeline which will help extend that runway? How are their margins doing, right? Their gross margins, net margins. Will some of these changes, like for example, scaling up of business, be able to modify those margins and hence help me reduce the kind of burn that is going on? And going concern as in, will the organization really survive, the time duration that I am looking to engage them in? So if they're out of money, right? they're likely not going to be able to survive, and maybe, they'll go into a defunct mode. So these are more numerical facts that we need to find based on the analysis that we do. Typically, when I go into a financial diligence, I will not do that at the start. You will have to sit with the founders to understand the business, how they are seeing it, what has happened in the past, what is going to happen in the future, and see whether all of those facts are corroborated in the statements that are there. So for me, each number, there is a story behind it, right? It is not just a number without any reference. So when the founder says, oh, you know what, I sold 20 units and each unit costs 10 rupees, I should be seeing revenue of 200. It is, as simple as that. If the revenue is 100, then I'm like, but you said it is 20 units, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's because, 8 were the full ones and then the rest were like, spare parts related to that. And those are some of the findings that we've had when we've done diligence on the organizations. So to use the financial statements and the numbers and the projections to verify whatever is the story that the entrepreneur is saying. And when I say story, I mean, in terms of the business narrative that they are building, is that something that we are able to verify with that, right? And we don't just take one scenario. We'll say, okay, what you are saying, and most of the times, entrepreneurs will be very, very optimistic, right? They'll say, oh, you know what, I'm going to go from 10 to 100 in the next 1 year. It doesn't work that way. So you say, okay, let's say what you are saying is the best case scenario. Can I work out, different scenarios to say, what will happen if you don't do the fundraise? What will happen if you do only half of the fundraise? What will happen if you are able to onboard 10 customers instead of 50 customers, right? What are the different situations? What is the worst that can happen? And am I prepared, or am I okay with the worst case scenario? Or what kind of potential actions can I take should the worst case scenario be something that I am going to face, right? So these are some of the findings, that we do. And of course, if you're doing an equity investment, you're looking at saying that, is there a valuation that is there, which is justified based on these? Can we do an exit strategy saying, how the business is going to grow, and what point in time, will more funds be needed? Will there be, likelihood of a strategic investor coming in, giving us a buyout, right? So some of those are where the financial diligence, has to come in to provide the answers to the questions and verify that whatever we are hearing, whatever we are seeing on the field is something that is also there in reality. So, again, another example. So I was working with a startup and they were talking about, going from manufacturing 100 units to 1,000 units. And, and I said, okay, that's great. And I looked at the financial statements and there was no plant and machinery. And I said, how are you manufacturing? Because you don't have any plant and machinery. So obviously that cannot happen. And they're like, oh, no, we are giving it on contract, right? So these are the kind of things that you are able to understand better, because then your next question is, okay, so how are we verifying that the contract manufacturer is adhering to a certain quality standard when they are manufacturing for you? Right. So the stream or the branching of the questions for us becomes different. Now, what is the capacity of the contract manufacturer to be able to fulfill the kind of orders that you are planning to, get to? So if you are at 100 and you want to get to 1,000, is your contract manufacturer, able to manufacture at that scale, right? So that's what I'm trying to say, that, each of the numbers in the financial statements should be able to tell us that story. I had another situation where, I had an organization where his revenue was hypothetically 1,000, and out of which about 600 was sitting in receivables, and the bulk of the revenue was booked in March. So I'm like, are you sure that you're not booking your revenue, in advance, right? Pre-booking the revenue. And I was able to find that how, because when I looked at the ratio of receivables to revenue, I said, this doesn't look right. If you are having a business which is not seasonal, you should be selling, maybe 10 units every month. Why do you have 60 units in March and maybe 1 or 2 units in the rest of the year? And all of it is sitting in receivables. So I don't know whether that sale is genuine or not, which gives me that window to say, let me go back to the enterprise, understand more on why the revenue was booked at the end of the financial year, and verify whether that is right or wrong, right? So, I mean, I don't know if I've been able to kind of give you a rough, because I can't really go into exact each ratio, right? That's, I think, something that you will be able to do based on, your financial statement templates and all of that, that would be there. But how do we approach financial diligence? I think I wanted to cover that at this point, right? I'll give you a couple of this thing. So this is one of the startups that I had taken for my debt portfolio. And I'm just showing you how we did the final presentation of the analysis. So we've done a deep dive into that organization for about 2 to 3 weeks, poured over their financials and had multiple conversations with them, and we were evaluating them for a loan, right? So we, of course, will do a summary and all of that. But in terms of the financial statements, right? So what I did was I said, okay, I need the person who is the decision maker to be able to see all of this in a snapshot. So what is the last 2 years of revenue? What is the current year? What are the next 2 years of projections, right? So I'm covering like a 5-year thing to say, what is the trend analysis over here? And we did tell them that, for us, as far as we are concerned, this does seem very optimistic in terms of the kind of numbers that are there, right? What is the revenue? What are the kind of costs that are associated with that? What is the gross profit margin? And the significant jump from, 11 to 20 was something that, then the investment committee was able to grill the founders on, saying, this doesn't make sense. You have to go deeper and tell us how you're going to get to 20, right? If I look at the loss, right? So the loss is also something that was increasing, but, and there was no kind of pathway to break even in the coming 3 years. Is that something that is acceptable to me? What is the kind of net worth? What are the cash balances we have? And what are the risks that we saw in the business, that we were highlighting there? We also had put up a debt eligibility based on financial markers, right? Like founders having a credit score of a certain value, right? Net worth. So while there were losses, if you see that, the business had significant losses in the, the last 2 or 3 financial years. But when I look at their net worth, it is positive because they had raised a substantial amount of equity, which meant that they had the cash cushion and the runway to last for another, a couple of years. So that is what gave me comfort, saying that, yes, I can evaluate them for a loan. If I just look at the profit and loss account, I wouldn't be able to come and draw this conclusion. What is the kind of debt to equity ratio we have, the current assets and liabilities ratio, right? And what hence is the risk to debt repayability that we have, right? We also looked at what is the history of default and how do we again verify this. When we went to the financial statements, we said, what are the other loans that are there in the last 2 or 3 years? Were they repaid on time, right? Again, that information, even if the founder doesn't give, I was able to get through the financial statements. And then last, we did a snapshot to say that, what will happen in a no growth scenario. So where the founder had, assumed that, they will grow at a very high rate. We said, I'm going to assume that there is going to be no growth. And even with a no growth scenario, do I see that there is a risk in terms of repayment of the loan? And where we were able to conclude that even at the current level, without any extra fundraise, they will be able to repay the loan, is where we made the recommendation. So that was how the financial analysis was done to support the decision in terms of the loan making, right? So I just wanted to share that much. I think that's a lot of information I have shared, and I hope I have not overwhelmed you all. But We have a research report on our website on blended finance for social enterprises. So if that's of interest to you that I have authored, please do go through that. And we have a lot of other materials on our website. So that was all from me.
All right, thank you, Vibha. No, that was really great. I think you've explained it very well, and I think it was a very comprehensive presentation on financial due diligence. I just wanted to open the floor up for any quick questions for Vibha regarding what she presented. You can raise your hand. You can also chat us up on the chat box.
While we're waiting for that, right? So I'll just quickly add. So
Sure.
when we do the legal and the compliance diligence and all that, I also saw a bunch of questions in the chat earlier about getting documents and the data from the enterprises where we are doing diligence. How we have done is that and it's always going to remain a challenge. It's never going to be easy. But what we do is we have a list of data that's a starting point, right? And we give it to the startup when we are looking to onboard them, saying that you have to start uploading this data on the folder and keep ticking as it is happening. Only when the substantial portion of that has been uploaded is when we initiate the the legal and the compliance based diligence for which the data is needed. So where the
Awesome.
partial, okay, so Amit, I think your question is what do we do when partial information is available or receiving information is very slow? I think we've done like 2 or 3 things. So one, we've put in a deadline saying if it's not there by that time, we can't take you forward. Typically, we will keep 1 or 2 backups, when we are selecting organizations, and, kind of putting that deadline has helped. Second, we also have divided the list into 2 parts, right? One is to say what is the must-have information for us to even begin diligence with you. Otherwise, we're not going to look at you. And then the second portion, which is a good to have, right? To more clarify the kind of information that we need. So the must-haves are something that are very basic, and if somebody says that they are not able to provide, then we don't take them forward.
So, thanks, Vibha. I have a quick one. I think what I'm
Mhm.
curious of is there, in terms of the financial diligence, is there any like strong signals that is most predictive of like long-term success for you out of all the different aspects that you ask for? Which ones do you usually look at in terms of like, are they going to really do well financially? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's one, but there are a few, right? So, like, for example, what we typically would like to call it, as a business model assessment through financials, right? So, what is the quality of the revenue? And when I say quality, I'm not talking about the amount, but how diversified is it? Is it stable, right? Is it recurring, or is it like a one-off thing? Is it very seasonal, right? So these are some. So looking at the quality of the revenue, I think that is one very critical aspect. And second, the cash, right? So if I had to pick only 2, then those would be the 2 that are very important for us to make sure that they are right. There's this
I
question:
think
what tools?
George, yeah.
Yeah, do you give the startup for data claim? So unless the startup is like very early, say less than 1 year, the chances of it not having any records is very low, because the kind of startups that we work with, like I said, we work with for-profit private limited companies. So by law, they are all mandated to keep records. So we will so that base level is definitely there, right? If there are any additions, so the challenges where they come is in terms of the more detailed records, right? So base records everybody will have, but when you look at detailed records saying, what is the profile of the people you've sold to, especially because we're looking at impact, right? That's where the challenges do come in. But there we look at, is there a possibility of bringing in an improvement or a change in the near term. And we look at setting those as milestones in the, when we onboard the startup for any subsequent fund release. So we kind of bring those into the, the program that we are running with them.
Great. Thank you. And of course, we'll be happy to share Vibha's slides plus the article that's linked after the call to everybody who's attended the session. We have one here from Evan. On average, how long does full diligence take for a debt deal, and how many FTE are dedicated to that deal?
So when it comes to debt, right? So in the program that we ran, so it was like a multi-staged diligence. Because we did the screening and we did an initial desk diligence that roughly took about 2 to 3 weeks, right? To get all the data, to do the analysis, go back with follow-up questions and all that. And after the investment committee approved it, and this was a debt where we were enabling guarantee for the debt to be given by the financial institution. So ours was only a first stage diligence. Post that, the financial institution, which is the bank or the NBFC, they did another further detailed diligence, which took about 2 months. So in end to end, it was about 3 months. Where we have done loan from our own books, there we have taken about 4 to 6 weeks to finish the diligence, including a field visit.
Great. Thanks. I think this is going to be our last question from two of Next
Yes.
Vietnam. I guess it's in terms of like early stage enterprises, how can you analyze their financial health through statements? And is there any tool to analyze for early stage enterprises?
Yeah. So while you may not have audited financial statements, what you definitely have is business plans, or at least if they don't have, making sure that they make one, right? And that's where, I spoke about the whole business model itself that we are evaluating, saying what are the assumptions? How are they looking at building revenue channels? What are the sources of revenue? How are they reaching the customer, right? So, and are people and costs related to those being factored in? Is the technology there, for that to happen? Do we see that, if they say, what, I'm going to have a software to do all this, who's going to pay for the software, right? Is the software cost being budgeted? So looking at an analysis of their future 2 years of plans, if the startup is so new that they don't have a historical data, that is something that has been useful. And that also helps us arrive at saying what is the amount of money that the startup needs to raise, what is the kind of money that they need to raise, grant or equity, definitely not debt, right? So that they need to raise, and that's how we then look at supporting them. But the plan is definitely something that we can look at.
Great. Thank you so much, Vibha. That was really helpful. I think we've gotten a lot of insights from what you've shared so far. And again, we'll be sharing Vibha's slides, the recording to the session as well, and the link to her article after the session. So
Great.
let's give Vibha a round of applause, everyone. And we will now proceed to Ouma of Women Investment Club, Senegal, to give her experience in their due diligence process. Ouma, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Rod, and hello again, everybody. I think it's really good that we come after Vibha because we'll be able, I think we may answer a few of the questions. I saw some questions in the chat, and we may, I may answer them, especially the one for the businesses that doesn't have actually the financial paperwork, so things like that. So as I said, we are an accelerator program, WIC Academy, and we are actually an investment readiness program. So our job is to prepare entrepreneur for the financial due diligence like it was presented before. Because we are preparing entrepreneur to raise funds, so to meet all the criteria that are required by a financial actor, and for them also to be able to have all the paperwork and really come prepared to the due diligence to reduce the due diligence time. So WIC Academy, so we train women, we are specialized on women entrepreneurs. So we will support women entrepreneurs in their whole business development, concentrating on on access to financing. And so we will take into account the different criteria that are required by banks, by fund, by microcredit to prepare them so that when they will meet the fund, they will already have some of the due diligence element already for them to be able to raise these funds. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so what we do is mostly an assessment that we do for us to first identify everything related to the business itself, understand their situation, and also help them define their priority when they're raising fund for what actually they need the fund for, if they really need fund in their business, and then design a really tailored program. What is different from what we do differently from other accelerator program is that we try to have an individual support with women entrepreneurs because we really want to understand the challenges and the issues faced by each entrepreneur of the cohort, assess them and give a direct response and personalized answer for them to be able to overcome this obstacle. So when we launch the program, we have about 20 entrepreneurs in the cohort, and we will do an assessment with each of them to really understand what is their situation, actually, where we want to go, and how we can support them and go with them through the different steps. So they will, all along the program, they will face a different kind of expert based on the assessment that was done before for us to make sure that we will address this issue, but also that they will start preparing their data room for the different due diligence, whether it's finance or technical or impact and things like that. The due diligence is in two parts. First, it's a self-assessment. So we will send them a form with a number of questions in different areas. I will talk about it later because we want first for them to come up with their own vision of their business, what they want to do, their objectives, and also the area where they think that they need support and improvement. And on the second time, we will redo the same exercise with them, coming with an outside view and giving them a really objective side of what we think the business is and what we think they can do. And having this assessment on two parts is really interesting because sometimes some entrepreneurs are not really aware of how their business is perceived on the outside, and it leaves a really good place for improvement. So we will address a different part of the business. We are not only concentrating on the business, but also on the entrepreneur themselves, because we also want them to grow as a person and be able to better manage their business. So we will concentrate on both sides. We have 6 areas that are that will be assessed during this due diligence, and for each area we'll have about 10 questions, some of them really specific that we want to address. So we will look at the project or the business, the activities in its globality, and whether the entrepreneur is really able to express what the business model is, what the problem is when they decided to grow this business. We will also look at impact, not only social impact like job creation, for example, but also environmental impact, because today we want to have businesses that are climate smart, that do really understand the challenges linked to the environment, and also how they can contribute to a climate smart and environmental friendly practices. Of course, we look at the business model, everything related to customer sales, communication, what they are already doing and what they need to improve for them to grow their businesses. Finance, we'll look at everything related to finance. And when it comes, we work with businesses that are pretty young. So a lot of them don't have all the paperwork, they don't have records. And so our job is also to provide them with tools on how to reconcile, for example, past operations that have not been recorded, and how from now on they can do it with, even if they don't have the expertise, but how they can do it with a really basic tool like Excel or things like that. So we'll look at finance, try to find with them if their business is sustainable and how the figures are, how the prices are, and really everything related to business, and also their capacity when it comes to, for example, taking debts or having an investor coming, or if they want to open their capital. The growth strategy, we want to really see if there is space for scaling the business, how they can scale their business, when they will also be able to start the scaling strategy, and then gender, because WIC is really dedicated to women entrepreneurs. We want to have businesses that are specific gender strategy that are also gender smart, whether the manager is a man or a woman, but we really want them to develop strategy in favor of women or develop activities that will contribute to women empowerment. So we decided to dedicate a specific area to gender to make sure that that the entrepreneur really understand what we're talking about when it comes to gender and how their businesses can have a positive impact on everything related to this notion. Why we do the assessment? It's first because we want to really understand the situation that the entrepreneur face, and we also want them to understand where they're standing. Because when you're running a business, sometimes we see that when you have your head in all of the business and on the day-to-day activities, something you may miss a lot of things, and it's a really good time for the entrepreneur themselves to step back a little bit and look at the big picture and make their own due diligence, because we come with them and understand what the situation. Identify all the needs, the strengths, the challenges, and on what point we want to work with the entrepreneur, but also how they want to improve, whether it's for themselves or their employees, and really list everything that it's possible to be done within the time that we're working with them, but also after, leave space for improvement, so that even when WIC won't be there with them anymore, they will still be able to work on improving their activities. We will also define priority areas on what they really need to work on if they want to scale their business, but also if they want to be able to attract fund, and how to absorb this fund and how to use this fund in order for the business to grow. And then impact. Impact is really important for us, as I said before, whether it's social or environmental. It's really important for the entrepreneur to understand the impact that they can have, the impact that they also have, but also be able to measure it and to promote it and use it to demonstrate what they are really doing for their communities, and also put it forward when it comes to raising funds. So we have some entrepreneurs, for example, who were able to raise funds and have a privilege condition because they were able actually to demonstrate their environmental impact because they were changing their equipment and things like that. So this is the area that we are addressing. As I said, we come before the fund, before the bank, and before actually raising fund. And we really want entrepreneurs to be prepared for everything, to really understand what funds or banks are looking for when they will go there to ask for finance, and so that we can reduce the due diligence delay and so that they all already understand what is expecting from them and they don't have to start from scratch. Why we did that is because we have our own fund with capital, and when the fund that created, we realized that there were a lot of businesses that we wanted to invest in, but that weren't ready for that. And so due diligence years were really long, sometimes between 12 and 18 months, maybe more. And it was really too long. When an entrepreneur needs money, they actually need it now. So this is why we set up WIC Academy to come as a pre-investment readiness program, so that all the work will be done, most of the work will be done pre-investment. And when they will come in front of the fund, they will already have a lot of things that will be ready for them to go and raise these funds. I guess that's it for me. Do you want me maybe to show how the form looks like? It's in French.
Yes,
But I can
please.
still, I can
Go ahead,
still.
Ouma. We
Okay.
still have about 3 more minutes, so yeah,
Ah,
that would
okay.
be great to see.
So we have a template that we
Sorry,
put on
go ahead.
down. Yeah. That we put on, it's in French, but I guess you will understand. So we have this template with, as you see here, all the area that I was talking about. And this template will be sent to the entrepreneur so that they can first do their self-assessment. So we have just general question about the entrepreneur, the activities, and also the person who will be answering the question. We encourage them to work in collaboration with the other employee, because we do understand that the manager is not the person who is in charge of everything, and they don't always have expertise on everything. And it's a good way for them also to gather all the employee at the same time and have some time to talk about it and exchange about the different area. So about impact, we will, for example, ask if the manager is able to measure their impact, if they are actually aware of what kind of impact they have, if they do understand when we talk about impact, what is it about? Are they creating job? Is it mostly on environmental? And how they assess everything and how actually it is presented in the strategy. We will also ask about governance, how the governance is set up, and if they really have a really clear governance and decision-making process. About the business model, it will be value proposition, sustainability, value chain also, if they are aware of the sustainability of the business and the finance, if they think that their business model is scalable or not, and what are the decisions that they are making to work on that. About scaling strategy, we will talk about team, also how the team is built as of now, if there's potential for more recruitment, if they need more expertise, for example, how the sales process are set up, if they already have a scaling strategy, and how they plan to put it in place. We'll talk about production, partnership also, and how they intend to build more partnership toward scaling the business. About finance, it will be pretty, I think, the usual question that we asked, but we really want to know if they already have like a financial strategy set up, if they have all the documentation, if they are tracking their finance. So if they have, for example, if they are doing declaration, if they are paying their taxes. These are the things that we will ask them, and also look into the paperwork and see where they stand when it comes, for example, to paying taxes and things like that. If they have contract, if they have a salary grid, for example. About gender, we will look at the team, how the team is built, if there is a space for improvement about that, how they, for example, broadcast when it comes to recruiting, so that we make sure that women doesn't feel excluded about that. If they have some also initiative to support small businesses, small women businesses, this especially for businesses that will be in the agribusiness sector. So for example, if they're supporting local small groups, for example, and things like that, and still if there is way for improvement, we'll also make sure that the product or services that we're selling doesn't come against women empowerment, but on the contrary, encourage it. And we have another sheet for just, general question that they may ask or additional things that they want to share with us.
Awesome. Thank you, Ouma. Would you mind sharing this as well? I mean, I'm sure people can find ways to translate it from French to English. So, but I think this is a very helpful framework, and thank you so much for sharing that. Do we have any questions from the group? You can raise your hand or again, put it in the chat, just like the other members. Yes, Kaisla, please go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for the detailed presentation. My question would be, assuming that we had SMEs based in Senegal who have gone through some form of investor readiness training, but are still looking for funding, and like you said, you have your own fund, the WE fund. Would they have to go through your cohort-based training first, or would it be something that you now probably just take them through due diligence and see whether or not they qualify for funding?
Okay. No, actually, they don't have to go through our program before if they want to present their business to the fund, to WIC Capital. They can go straight to WIC Capital saying, okay, we're looking for financing, for example, and maybe they will already be ready since they actually, as you said, already did the investment readiness program. If not, WIC Capital can tell them, okay, this is what we think is missing from your business. And if you want, you may go to WIC Academy to be trained. But actually, you don't need to go through the whole WIC Academy process to be eligible for WIC Capital, for the fund.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kaisla. I see Evan has two questions. Ouma, one, what specific training and resources do you provide your entrepreneurs? And then two, how do you know when they're ready to move to WIC Capital? Like any KPIs?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm going to answer the second question first. How do we know we're ready? When we do the first evaluation and the assessment, WIC Capital is part of the process. So they will participate in evaluating the entrepreneur before they enter WIC Academy. So they will already have a view on which entrepreneur can be most interesting for them. But we will also associate other partners, other financial partners who will be here to also do this first evaluation. And they will tell us, okay, this is the area where we want to improve. We based our training on what the financial partner are expecting. So for example, if a bank said, okay, we need a business plan for the entrepreneur, we will ask them in the business plan, what exactly do you want to see? The training program lasts between 4 to 6 months, and at the end, they have documents that they need to produce. So it will be the business plan, for example, financial projection, and also a pitch deck. So these are the first 3 elements that if you don't have these 3 elements, you won't be able to be, your business you won't be put in contact with other partners. So this is the first thing. And then we will also see how they increase in competencies, in the process, how they better structure their business, how they improve their internal process. So all along the program, we will we review the assessment. We do impact measurement all along the program to see how they have evolved. And at the end of the program, we have a demo day where entrepreneur can pitch. And then at the pitching session, we will also evaluate whether they are ready or not to be connected with the financial partner, whether it's the fund, it's WIC Capital, or any other financial partners. About the specific training, we have a curriculum, a based curriculum with, I would say, general topics that we'll address with entrepreneur. So the thing that you need to know when you want to manage your business. So it will like how to manage your finance, for example, human resources, business model Canva and things like that. And then depending on the assessment, they will have specific training with experts. So some of the entrepreneurs, for example, after the due diligence, will find out that, okay, they need to be much more supported when it comes to structuring their finance. Then they will have a financial specialist in front of them to work with them for 3 or 4 months, for example, to do this. Some other person will need help with human resources, other will need help with impact. So depending actually on the result of the due diligence, we will build a personalized curriculum with each entrepreneur for them to be able to address this different program. And then they have different kinds of templates. We have a platform where they can have access to all the paperwork and all the presentation and supporting document and resources that they will be able to use to actually work after at their own pace.
Great. Thank you, Ouma. I just know that Harsha has a hard stop. So if we have any more questions for Ouma or even Vibha, we can go to the end later and ask more questions. But again, let's give Ouma a round of applause. Thank you so much. That was a really great presentation. Very helpful. So yeah, we'll go straight into Harsha. I know this is gonna be great because we handle the finances. Ouma kind of talked about more of the entrepreneur and overall due diligence, and then Harsha will now talk about more of the impact side. So it's a really great complementary set of speakers that we have today. So Harsha, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Vibha and Ouma. I think, yeah, you've covered the finance bit really well. So now I'll just go on a complete different tangent, which is to capture the impact. So I don't have a slide deck with me, but I'll just present our model that we use to quantify carbon emissions for the businesses that we work with. So I'll just be walking through the methodology of how we're doing it. But before I jump right into it, I would just want to add a little bit about Greenr so that it helps us understand what led us to do this and the purpose behind this exercise. So Greenr is actually a green startup accelerator in India, and our scale is quite massive. So we onboard close to 140, 150 businesses every year in each cohort. And our cohort program is a year-long program. There are some tracks that are 12 months long and then some that are 18 months long. So given the program duration and the number of startups that we work with, the scale is quite huge. Our primary work with these businesses is to help them scale their business. So the hypothesis is that these green businesses, they already have a green impact, as in they're either taking something bad out of the system or putting something good in, right? So in terms of their product solution, it's carbon negative, essentially. That is, it's trying to decrease carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So the idea is that when we help them scale, their green impact also increases. So now we got the business advisory bit sorted in our team, right, from the get-go. We have a team of business advisors that work with these startups one-on-one to help with their business challenges. But we also wanted to equip our startups on a way to measure their own environmental impact. While their product may be green, but if the startup's operations are not green, then it doesn't serve the point, right? So the aim is that the business with both their product or service and their operations is carbon negative. So we sort of developed this model in-house, which helps startups track emissions across scope 1, 2, 3. Just a quick high-level explanation of scope 1 to 3 who are not familiar with them. So these are just categories defined by the GHG protocol, Greenhouse Gas Protocol, to measure emissions from an organization's activities. It's a global standard, and these scopes essentially just break down your emissions into different categories. So the benefit of this tool is that, as I said, it helps capture the emissions due to the business operations. And once we equip our startups with these, they can use it even after our program ends to capture their emissions. And this helps us also to understand if the startups that we work with, if they're really green. Now, if they're not green, like how can we help them sort of be more green, right? So for example, one of our startups were creating homes out of shipping containers. Though they were reducing the need to construct homes and avoid using those harmful construction materials. Through this exercise, we realized that they were still carbon positive because they relied heavily on transportation, right? So these containers are massive. And so when you transport these containers from one place to the other, the emissions that come with transporting them, they are extremely huge. So yeah, this exercise just helped us figure that out. And then we later helped them minimize their requirement to transport it, which then it reduced their cost and also decreased the emissions. So this data collection tool is actually an adaptation of UN Climate Hub's normative calculator. Normative also has a similar calculator available online. But what we've been able to do here is make it more easy for the startups based in India. For example, we've localized it by using, say, Indian currencies everywhere, or simplifying the drop down so people don't have to scroll through long irrelevant lists, and then also like removing elements that don't apply to Indian startups. So I'll just quickly walk you all through the model. Yeah, I can skip this. Yeah, so this is where the startups. So we give this Excel sheet to our startups, and they essentially have to fill it. So this is just the overview page where they just fill in their company name, sector, and the number of employees and revenue. So this just helps us benchmark a particular startup with other startups. Yeah, and then I'll go on to the next one quickly. Yeah, so the fuel tab, as I said, scope 1, 2, and 3, right? So I'll just give a breakdown of what scope 1, 2, and 3 are. Scope 1 covers the direct emissions from a company's owned sources. So your vehicles, be it cars or trucks or scooters, your machines that you use, and the fuel that these machines and vehicles consume, right? This would be part of your scope 1 emissions. Scope 2 is your indirect emissions from purchased energy, which is electricity mostly. And scope 3 includes all of the other indirect emissions. For example, if you're purchasing raw materials or if you're traveling for business, emissions associated with that. And then if you have other capital goods, right, with your coming with your business operations. So all of that is in scope 3. So for scope 1, you can see that we just capture like some information on how many vehicles do they own, what was the kind of fuel that was used. And then there are two types of capturing this data. One is that you can use your consumption data, and the other is the expense data. So mostly startups, they only have expense data because it's very hard to track your consumption. But if the startups do have consumption data, we prefer that because the calculation that we do at the back end to derive the emissions out of these is much more accurate if you use consumption data and not expense data. So yeah, so basically we've divided the year into all the 3 months, and then they can enter in liters unit, the amount of fuel that was used. And if they don't have liters data, like consumption data, they can then enter the expense data as well. So this is for the vehicles, and then we break it down similarly for the machines as well. So this is pretty straightforward. The idea was to make it straightforward so that the founders can use it frequently. Then moving on to scope 2 emissions. So scope 2 emissions basically just is electricity. So here we're capturing some basic information about how much was their, how large were the facilities, if they're using renewable energy or not. And then similarly, in a similar format, we're capturing the consumption data in kilowatt hertz for all the 12 months. And then if they don't have that, then we also use, we also ask for expense data. So this is coming from their electricity bills. Yeah, this is also pretty straightforward. And then, yeah, this is a little bit more detailed. So this is scope 3. So scope 3, here we are capturing expense data across different categories. So business travel, transportation, materials that they've purchased. And we've like detailed out the different categories, right? It could be furniture, it could be paper, it could be textiles, metal, wood. So all of these different products would have a different emission factor associated with it. So which is why it is very important to break them down in each category. Similarly for capital goods and services spend, right? So for example, if you're using any softwares, so even those have certain emissions associated with it across your value chain. And if you're using any legal services, financials or banking charges and all of that. So all of this information is basically coming from your audited financial statements. Yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward. And then what we do is I'll just quickly show you the results tab. So we aggregate all of that information over here, like category wise. And then we have the emission factors that we've taken from credible sources such as DEFRA and Axio Base. So these are UK government databases, which we've been able to extract information from. So for example, if you look at, basically how these emission factors work is that, let's say you look at business travel with train, right? So if you're spending about 100,000 Indian rupees on business travel, that means that you're essentially emitting about 0.79 tons of CO2 emissions, CO2 equivalent emissions, right? So this is what we've been able to do. So once we get all of the aggregate information, there's a bit of calculation that's done at the back end. And then the output that we are able to generate for the startups is this, where we detail out for every scope, where is the emissions the highest, right? And this just helps the startups also see where they're emitting the most. For most, actually, it's scope 3, right? And even within scope 3, let's say your emissions is most on business travel, or if it's on capital goods, then you can like take actions to reduce those emissions. And oftentimes, this really helps in reducing the cost as well, because this helps you realize that, oh, you're spending too much in one particular category, but you don't need to, and there are ways to do it more efficiently. And that's better for the business financially and also environmentally as well. So yeah, this was a quick rundown of the tool that we use at Greenr. Yeah, I can open for questions if there are any.
Awesome. Thank you, Harsha. No, this is really great. I think when the last we talked about this, something that I found helpful in this is like it creates both awareness for the incubator, but also for the business in terms of their emissions, right? And how maybe they can reduce it in terms of direct, indirect, and supply chain emissions. So it's a great first step to reducing them, being aware of how much is created through their business process. So yeah, happy to take on any questions from the group in terms of what Harsha has shared. I guess maybe while they're thinking, Harsha, my question is, I'm curious whether do you, as Greenr, does it become a do you have a certain threshold at which you accept the enterprises that come in for you, depending on the emissions that they create? Or is it more of just an initial assessment and then you help them reduce it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is more of an initial assessment, as you said. So what we, while we onboard these startups, is look for that the product is essentially green. So we do a lot of due diligence and research on if the product offering, if that is green, in the sense that, as I said, it's either taking something bad out of the system or putting something good in, right? But this part of the exercise is just adding on to it, where you also gauge if the business operations is green and not just the product that they sell. Because of oftentimes you have a really good product, but you're not operating in an efficient way. So that leads to a lot of more emissions. So the net is still negative, positive, carbon positive, right? Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the group?
Yeah, I can share my contact details later, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
And Harsha, just making sure we're okay to also share like a copy of this to
Yeah, I can share a template. Yes.
the members. Awesome, great. And we'll do that through our thank you email. One last call in case there's anybody else who wants to ask a question for Harsha. Okay, great. If none, well, thank you, Harsha, for sharing this. This is really awesome. Love seeing this framework.
Thank you so
Let's
much.
give Harsha a round of applause, everyone. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so we got to see 3 really great processes from 3 different organizations, and they focused on different things in terms of their due diligence process. I just wanted to give one last opportunity for anybody from the group to ask any questions to either Vibha, Ouma, or Harsha in terms of their presentations, or if they were curious about anything before we end for today. Of course, anything related to due diligence, that is. Right. Maybe while people are thinking, I have one quick question for all 3 speakers. If maybe I were a newer incubator, let's say I'm an early stage incubator and I'm starting out on formalizing our due diligence process, in terms of your own perspectives, what would be maybe one of the first steps that I could take to help me formalize this process better, like more efficient, as I get ready to maybe take on more complex due diligence processes? Yeah, anybody can start us off. Yeah, Ouma, please go ahead.
I think it's really important to have it, even if it's not set up yet, but to have it in mind. Because once you have set up all your programs and everything, it can be difficult to find some space to do the assessment or the due diligence. And it's really important to do it at first to make sure that we are actually addressing what the entrepreneur needs, and not coming with an already tailored program where we will want our beneficiary to fit in instead of doing it the other way around. So I think it's important to keep in mind that we are here to support the entrepreneur. So we have to give them the tools and everything that they need to evolve. And for this, we really need to do it first. So it's really the first step before doing something else. And it doesn't have to be too much elaborated. I think you just have to start somewhere with even basic questions. And then you can, as you learn, you will also learn from the entrepreneur and improve your tools, but at least try to understand the minimum of the businesses before launching the program.
Awesome. Thanks, Ouma. Harsha, Vibha?
No, I think Ouma pretty much covered it, and I agree with that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, Vibha, yes, please go ahead.
No, I think overall, just to kind of have what is it that you need to get at the end of all of that process, right? And if it's just one thing, I think not going into all the other 20 things that are possible, right? So the amount of data will be endless, right? So to say that what is priority for me, establishing that and kind of staying true to that, I think that and embedding it into the process of your diligence, that's where I think it will be most useful.
Awesome. Well, thank you again
Thank
to
you.
Vibha, Ouma, and Harsha for joining us today and sharing their processes with us. Quickly, I would like it if everybody could answer your feedback form for this session, just to let us know how you liked this format. And maybe while we're doing that, if Harsha, Ouma, and Vibha want to give the quick thanks or anything else that they'd like to say before we end for today. Maybe I'll start with Harsha, who I know has to go any minute. So Harsha, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it was really great to be given this opportunity and sharing our tool with all of you. Yeah, and I'll be happy to interact with any one of you who are interested in knowing more about the tool, and just reach out if anything, if any queries, even if not, if you want to just talk, I'll be happy to. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Great. Thanks, Harsha. Ouma, please go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Ouma. Sorry.
Sorry. No, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share what we're doing. I think I also learned from the other presentation, so it was pretty nice. And yeah, I'm available to answer more questions or share. I will also send you all the tools for those who are interested in deepen it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ouma. And lastly, Vibha.
Right. No, I think it's been a fabulous, thank you for the opportunity, fabulous session. And it would be great to kind of engage with the people who were there on the session today to see if there's anything else that we can help them or support them with. So look forward to kind of interacting and keeping in touch.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again. And thank you everybody for joining us for today's session. I hope you've taken away a thing or two about due diligence processes today, and we hope to see you in our next Pollinate session. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest
Thank
of your
you.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.